So next up in our rundown is the Facebook whistleblower story. You may have followed the saga of Frances Houghton. I think that's
Haugen.
Haugen is how you say her name. Now, she has said that she was working in an ethics department in Facebook, and she became very concerned about some of Facebook's inner policies, specifically how they manipulate hateful speech and how the algorithm prioritizes things that are more controversial in order to get users to spend more time and engage more on the site. Now, there's been some connections and some questions about her legal team recently. Specifically, this is a confusing story. It's got Clayton all up in arms, but specifically from her legal team, her legal team is led by...
Good afternoon, Chairman Blumenthal.
Okay, I'll let her talk.
Member
Sorry.
Blackburn and members.
Sorry, I didn't mean to play audio on this.
Okay, that's all right.
And you're done, Natalie.
Okay. She says, well, let's just let her say that. Where was I?
Okay,
You were talking about her legal team, who the first person on
her legal team, that it's unclear when she joined this legal team, but there are reports that people inside her legal team already had this national security agenda. And so the implication here is that she may have joined them a little too soon before she sort of discovered the things she said she discovered about the 2020 election and things like that. And that there are questions on whether or not she was placed here by this team that already had an agenda for the government actually manipulating social media for its own purpose, right?
Yeah, and now she's set to meet with the oversight board at Facebook, suggesting that this whole supposed underdog whistleblower had never been a threat to her former employee and may have actually been colluding in a mutually beneficial way. That's the whole issue here. It's like, how is this so? This seemed to me like so convenient, right? This woman has access to all of these things inside of Facebook. She suddenly then appears on 60 Minutes. She's brought before Congress, and her main focus is that Congress now should step in and basically censor Facebook, right? And this is exactly what the intelligence community wants. And then then the gray zone starts to peel the onions back on her affiliations with national security insiders and legal representation from the national security state. So if you're sitting back and you're cynical, right?
Which you are.
Yeah, if you're cynical.
I was going to say something the first time we talked about this story, but I was like, I'm not going to say it right now because there's just not enough data out there. But I was like, this woman is pro-censorship, and here it comes.
Yeah, and it's like this whole crusade.
So you think that she went into... So, okay, let me unpack this, what's it called?
The narrative?
Let me unpack the narrative.
Okay.
So you think the government asked her to go and work for Facebook and then bring up things that were concerning on a national stage so that it then justifies government censorship and more government rules around social media because the government has so far been unable to do that.
Right.
This is a conspiracy theory.
This is one of the first things that she asks in her testimony. This is the very top of her testimony when she asks specifically to make sure that Congress can step in because guess what? Facebook is just not going to do it. And the public has been led to believe that she went on this like moral crusade, right? That I am here because people are getting hurt.
Yeah.
People are getting hurt. And she went on this it was driven by nothing more than her own sense of like sudden indignation about Facebook. I just can't stand for it anymore. And she's going to stamp out misinformation. And I'm not going to allow for this political and hate speech and other things to be skewed and pushed here on Facebook. So I've got to go to my whistleblowing attorney, who, by the way, has ties to the national security state, the NSA, the CIA. Somehow, wow, this is interesting. And now I'm going to be hauled before Congress, and I'm going to basically tell Congress how bad everything is. And Congress, we need your help. Here's her in front of the Senate, in front of the House, making this plea.
Businesses weren't able to reach potential customers, and countless photos of new babies weren't joyously celebrated by family and friends around the world. Bring out the best in us. But I'm here today because I believe Facebook's products harm children, stoke division, and weaken our democracy. The company's leadership knows how to make Facebook and Instagram safer, but won't make the necessary changes because they have put their astronomical profits before people. Congressional action is needed. They won't solve this crisis without your help. Yesterday, we saw Facebook.
You talk about.
So
I don't know why.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. David, what was it that bothered you right out of the gate before?
What bothered me, what smelled funny to me is like how quickly this progressed. Like she comes out, she does a 60-minute interview, and then boom, she's talking to Congress, and she's got this perfectly laid out plan already of everything. And it just, like, because she was so pro censorship, and then there were some other people that did some detailed background checks on her and found that this is what she does. So I just, feel like she is just pushing an agenda that they've been trying to push for so long, and they got so many people behind it because of the whole Trump thing, like, oh, there's misinformation. The Russians upset the election. So everybody's kind of like on high alert. And here she comes at the perfect time to push that narrative.
Convenient. Yeah,
Right.
so convenient, right? Because when she was pressed on the 60 Minutes interview, you remember, what motivated her to speak out? She gave this really vague answer. She says, I'm quoting, "At some point in 2021, I realized I'm just going to have to do this in a systematic way. And I have to get so that no one can question that this is real."
And of all the things that are wrong with Facebook, you think that government manipulation is the worst of it, because there are Facebook leads to depression, Facebook leads to suicide in young girls, especially. There's so many other things that social media does wrong that we should think about as a society. But it's
what the government's concerned about
government
is terrorism, organization of protests, right? It's insurrections. It's violence.
But if the government regulates things that it thinks are harmful, such as opioids and drugs and guns and all of that, then the government should have equal interest in what social media does, but they're only specifically interested in sort of how this relates to politics.
I guess. I mean, she says, look, I never really wanted to be a whistleblower, but she says lives were in danger, she says. So I love how this is this Guardian piece, just she's just a hero. Listen to this. The woman whose revelations have rocked Facebook tells how spending time with her mother, a priest, motivated her to speak out. Oh, I'm sure it had nothing to do with any of the people that you've been working with or who've helped you get placed here at Facebook, from the national security state. Just speaking to your mom and a priest is what motivated you.
There have been other people saying the same thing. So why this blonde lady?
She's
right?
We need to find a blonde white lady who can come out and really say that this is the plan. And her goal, she says she wants there to be a social media, what does she call it? A social media czar? I forget. She wants the government to create a social media regulation department. That's her goal.
That won't go wrong.
Yeah. So that's her goal. Is we want to have a social media department. We want to have basically a regulation that can stop this type of thing in its tracks. And who's going to be on this board? Who's going to be the regulators?
Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Right.
Oh gosh. I think that it's just I think the establishment is actually legitimately getting worried because there's a lot of speak about third parties, and they're disenfranchised with the two-party system, and social media is the way that we're pushing that agenda ourselves as people. And I think that they're getting nervous. I really do.
Yeah, they don't want a third party, of course. Absolutely, they don't want a third party. And if you
or democratized speech.
Yeah, or free speech.
Right.
Yeah. Just look at what's happening at YouTube. Look what's happening at other platforms where they're censoring speech and taking down people that disagree with the establishment.
Right.
Anyway, this is all a little just too convenient, this Frances Hogan, and the fact that she's calling for, Congress to step in and basically create. She came up with this. She worked at Facebook. She just came up with the idea that Facebook or that the government needs to come up with a social media oversight
that sounds
regulation.
strange too.
I mean,
I have the solution.
Right.
I saw this company do bad things, but I want it to persist with a little more government help.
Yeah, let's get the State Department and the National Security Agency.
If you really felt this strongly about it, you would not want the company to persist.
Yeah.
All of us have sort of had that experience where you leave a corporation and you're like, I do not wish them well, right?
Well, and if you're
that's
somebody
not
with that kind of
usually-
position, why don't you meet with higher ups in Facebook and try to fix it there first?
Right.
No, let's just go right out to the public.
Yeah. And you know, I don't know. It's all just a little too fishy. It's a lot too fishy. So we're going to continue to follow the story. I'm very fascinated by this, and I think it's just all a little too convenient. But we've got more news to get to. Thanks for subscribing to the channel. You can also become a channel member by going to morninginvest.com/join, where you can stick it to the mainstream media and support independent journalism. We're able to bring you the stories that you won't see on any of the major billionaire-backed networks. Thanks so much. We'll see you next time, everyone.